Hello, welcome. Just going to give it a couple moments while people trickle in. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, well, I think it's kind of has leveled off a little bit, so I think we can get started. Welcome to Working with CCHA on a Fee-for-Service workshop. My name is Greg Stuart, and I'm the Education Programs Manager at the Conservation Center for Art and Historic Artifacts, or CCAHA, as you see on the screen. And I use they and he pronouns. Um, for accessibility's sake, I will say I'm a white person with glasses and dark hair. I'm wearing headphones and a blue button-down shirt, and there's a blurry office in my background. So just a little bit more about today's webinar. So I assume you're here because you think you might be interested in one of our fee-for-service workshops. Just a little bit more, these offerings provide training on a variety of preservation topics for you and other staff at your institution. So I'm going to walk you through kind of the different workshop topics, eligibility, and just the general process of working with us. I'm going to address some of the most frequently asked questions that we get about our workshops, as well as funding options available to support these professional development opportunities. So before we get to the presentation, just some Zoom housekeeping. You are currently in Zoom webinar, which means your video and audio are turned off, but you can ask questions or make comments to us in the chat. This program is auto closed captioned in English, and you can turn on subtitles with the little CC button in the Zoom toolbar. So my presentation, I think it's going to be fairly brief. I don't think we're going to need a full hour, but if we do, it's there. And so I'll present on our workshops, and then we'll have Q&A with you. But please feel free to ask any questions during the time of the program, and you can put them right in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. So as you'll see when you came in, the program is being recorded, and we'll send a recording as well as the PowerPoint in a follow-up email. So I want to say this program series was previously funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities, which allows us to provide high-quality education programs in fulfillment of our mission. However, that funding has ceased, so please consider a donation to CCAHA or an institutional membership if that applies to you to help keep our webinars free of cost to all. Like we say, every little bit helps, so we appreciate it. Just moving on, one quick note about the organization I work for, if you're not already familiar with us. The Conservation Center is a regional conservation lab and preservation services facility. We're based in Philadelphia, but we work with organizations and clients all across the country. Our conservators treat paper-based objects like books, photographs, documents, artworks and paper, and more. And our preservation services staff, like me, work in the field, providing educational programs like this one, and helping institutions plan for the future of their collections. CCHA also offers a wide range of digitization services, as well as fundraising assistance, housing, framing, and more. And you can learn more about what we do at our website, ccha.org. All right, so here's basically what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about, is a fee-for-service workshop right for you? How to select a workshop, if it is, and then we'll get a little bit into the pricing and fundraising opportunities that you might avail yourself to pay for these workshops. I want to give you a couple examples of some of our most requested workshops, just to give you a little bit more of a taste. And then finally, we'll kind of wrap up by talking about the process, sort of soup to nuts of working with us on one of these workshops. So even though we're talking about pricing today, I'm really hoping to get you excited about our workshops. This is really not intended as a sales pitch. We're a nonprofit and we really view this as part of our services. So hopefully they remain as cost effective as possible while still allowing us to cover things like staff time, travel, and the supply costs that it takes to run one of these workshops. Mostly, I really want to spend today, as I said, going through the nuts and bolts of our workshops in order to answer some of those most frequently asked questions that we get. So that is the main goal for today. So, audience for these workshops. Generally speaking, our fee-for-service workshops are intended for people, whether they be professionals or volunteers, who are probably already working in a gallery, library, archive, or museum, and who want to fill gaps in their knowledge or to gain training on a particular collections care issue that may be facing their organization. So if that doesn't apply to you, if you happen to be like a student, or maybe you're interested more in a personal or family collection, we do have things like courses and more community-oriented programs that might be more for you, but I wouldn't say that's a hard line. For example, we've definitely had folks who fit these descriptions that come to us from, say, other professional affiliations. So we've done workshops in the past with the New Jersey Association of Museums or the Philadelphia Area Consortium of Special Collections Libraries. So these are kind of some of the types of other organizations in addition to collecting institutions that we work for. So, but generally speaking, I'd say it's folks who are representing an organization and who are organizing this workshop for themselves and coworkers. I often get questions from people who are maybe departments of one or just coming interested in these workshops as individuals. And my general advice is that our workshops are best for small to mid-sized groups. So if you are an individual, I would say look into some of those professional organizations that you might belong to already, or even pooling your resources with other neighboring organizations. So we've had, for example, small historic house museums team up to do these as a group. And I'd say the number is pretty low that we can do it for. We can do it for groups as small as 3 people. But in general, our in-person attendance cap, the upper limit is going to be around 15 to 25, depending on how hands-on the particular activities that we're working with are. But we don't just do in-person workshops, we also have online webinars, and there the sky is really the limit for those in terms of attendance. Or actually, I should say the Zoom license and our Zoom license, for example, can hold up to 1,000 people. So if you have 1,000 friends and you want to, or 999 friends and you want to invite them to one of our webinars, by all means. So yeah, I guess then the next question might be, what type of content are you seeking? Generally, I would say our workshops fall into any of the types of themes here, broadly represented, whether it's collections, policy, and procedures, kind of the collections environment, things like, storage and, integrated pest management, stuff like that. Emergency management, we'll get into some examples of that if your institution is facing an emergency, and how to prepare for those. Collections care by material type, really focusing on paper-based items. And I should say that, yes, we are primarily we are a paper conservation lab, so that's going to be our specialization. But at the same time, so we want to have that represented, but at the same time, our staff in preservation services are generalists, and they're the ones most likely to be teaching these workshops. And they have experience with pretty much any type of material that's found in collections that you can imagine. Not just paintings, textiles, 3D objects, even like obsolete AV media, things like wet specimens. We've worked with automobile collections. I think we just had a request from an institution that had airplanes, so we can really work with you regardless of the collection type. And if I could ask, if you haven't already done it, Camilla, to just put that fee for service menu in the chat. It's also there as a QR code, so you could see our full list of topics on the fee for service menu on our website. And I will say, just because you don't see if you're looking through this list and you don't see a workshop that you're looking for, that doesn't necessarily mean we can't teach it. For example, we have a new digital archive specialist on staff as of about a year ago. And so if you really have questions on digital preservation or born digital works, we can certainly focus on that as well. And we do hope to have some of these digital preservation topics in our fee for service menu as we sort of get more requests and kind of see what the needs are there. Another newer area for us has been space assessments for cultural institutions as they're planning collection storage spaces or adapting collection storage spaces. So it's very possible that we might have some trainings on this in the future. And I will say that all of our workshops are customizable to fit your needs. So please don't hesitate to reach out, even if there's something that's like close, but not quite what you're looking for. We just have so much experience with such a wide range of collections that we can probably adapt. Okay, so next question would be, which format is right for you? I would say our workshops generally take the form of either a virtual, usually Zoom webinar, an in-person hands-on workshop, which is typically a half day or a full day in length, or some kind of hybrid combination of the two. Excuse me. We can also combine workshops for a full day or multi-day experience and different formats. Generally speaking, the content kind of dictates the format. So for example, a workshop like Essential Policies and Procedures for Cultural Institutions, we're going to usually teach that as a webinar because the in-person experience may not be as necessary for what is essentially sharing and discussing information. But then for something, if you look on our list, like housing solutions, where the main event is to build a custom four-flap enclosure, that's best done in person since it's so hands-on. Still, we can always adjust the content. So if for some reason you wanted to do the policies and procedures in person, we can deliver it that way. I would say even something like housing solutions, we can adapt to virtual. Even though you might lose the benefit of that hands-on instruction, we could probably figure out a way to do it as a demo, for instance. And for those in-person workshops, we come to you, we come to your space. So that generally means we're working with organizations within the US and frequently the Mid-Atlantic. We do ask that organizations reimburse us for travel expenses. So while we can do something, say on the West Coast, it might be a little bit cost prohibitive to do something further afield. But beyond the Mid-Atlantic, we've definitely done stuff in the Midwest, the Southern US. We've done stuff in Puerto Rico, for instance. And if travel really is a concern and that travel cost is a concern, there's always plenty of webinar content to avail yourself with. And that really we have kind of global reach on. All right. So let's talk about pricing. Again, just a general note on our price structure. We're a nonprofit, so we're not charging like a head count or anything. We're not charging per person. Our prices are really all about making sure our instructors' time is covered. So our baseline rate, I'll just say, and I'm saying this, that this is for today, November 6th, 2025, in case anybody's watching this recording from the future, would be $450 for a webinar, which is essentially factoring in roughly our hourly rate for an hour of prep and an hour of content delivery. And then it goes from up from there. So in-person workshops are usually a half day or full day experience. And as I mentioned, we also charge for travel expenses, which can be anything from mileage, plane or train travel, car rental, and depending on distance, hotel and lodging if we need to stay overnight. We also charge a per diem for food and other incidentals. We do calculate these rates using the General Administration or General Services Administration rates, and we do our best to stay within those estimates. Certain workshops also have other costs associated with them, including prep fees, per person supply fees, or in some cases, fees to cover a teaching assistant's time, especially if the workshop has more of an in-depth hands-on component. And if you're looking for something that's more customized, as I mentioned we can do, we might also charge our hourly rate for curriculum development, and we'll estimate a range of hours for this purpose. That's why I say it really depends on so many factors, and it's hard to specify a range of our workshops because they're just so different. So customizable. So if there's a particular workshop that you're interested in, please reach out to me directly. I'm going to provide my email and contact information at the end of this, and I can provide those cost estimates directly. So even if you don't have the budget for one of our workshops, there is financial assistance out there. Yes, you're probably aware that federal funding in the United States is in a bit of flux at the moment. In the past, we were often recommending the National Endowment for the Humanities preservation assistance grants for smaller institutions to help fund training like these. I will say at the moment, we're not currently aware of the status of these grants, though we hope at some point they or something similar will come back. Still, even as those funding streams have shifted in the past year, we've been able to be nimble, finding opportunities with state government and private funders, for instance. So some recent grants for workshops came from the state of New Jersey, and as well as the Museum Council of Greater Philadelphia. So we're getting creative. So if you don't have the internal budget, please don't let that be a barrier. We can still work with you to find funding. If you do have someone on staff, say a development professional or someone who's kind of responsible for finding those funding, or if you want to just look on your own, you might consider funds in your area that cover things like professional development or capacity building, which is such a big word for funders, a big buzzword. So like I say, just because you might not have funding at your institution doesn't mean that we can't help you identify a grant or something that might be out there that you can apply for. So, all right. So I just wanted to give you a couple examples of workshops just so you can see what they look like. One of our most requested is disaster response and recovery, where we basically simulate a water event by throwing objects like that are donated or that would have been otherwise thrown out into a kiddie pool. Yes, really, that's what we do. And you work in teams using the incident command system, which is an emergency response chain of command developed by first responders that we've adapted to salvage cultural heritage objects and perform triage. This hands-on portion of the workshop is preceded by a webinar where you learn all about the incident command system and how to salvage various material types safely. And the reason we do this as a water event with the kiddie pool and everything is that most disasters eventually become a wet water event, even if they don't start that way. So if you think of like if there was a fire at your institution, you'd have fire suppression. Even an earthquake might lead to a burst pipe. And yes, it's great if you have a messy space. I mean, the image you're seeing here, we actually did in a fire department, which was kind of cool. But if you have an outdoor space, we can do it in an outdoor space. We've done it in like a messy classroom space before at an institution. That's one of the things to think about with disaster response with this particular workshop. And of course, weather is often a factor if we're doing it outside. So we always think about rain dates. This one also has some fairly unique materials costs because we're able to provide not only all of the salvage supplies, things like blotter paper, newsprint, PPE, all sorts of things that you might use as part of the salvage operation. But we also come with the kiddie pools with the donated art and photographs and documents and, old slide negatives and things like that that we can just throw in the pool. So we can either source those for you. We have a big collection on hand. Or if you want to try to save some money, you can try to source those things on your own, and we'll give you the list of all of the items that we bring. So it's kind of like a cost benefit. Do you want to spend the time sourcing all of those objects, or do you want to just pay the money and we'll just do it for you? But we at least give you that flexibility for that workshop. So this is one of our most requested workshops. We love doing it. It's also, I mean, I say one of the added bonuses of it is that it's often kind of a great like team building exercise to get a bunch of people at your institution together and problem solve together. We've seen that kind of ancillary benefit, and then you can really feel a lot more prepared for any kind of disaster that might come your way. So highly recommend that one. Another popular workshop is mold prevention, detection, and response, where you learn all about the properties of mold and the conditions that allow it to produce. You learn how to identify it, how to stop it from spreading. And also we teach how to clean deactivated mold, sort of dry cleaning from collections, and how to prevent it from reactivating. We'll bring HEPA filtered vacuums and other cleaning supplies. And we're definitely not bringing moldy things into your site. We use chalk dust to simulate the inactive mold that might be found on collections, since it has similar physical properties but doesn't pose any health risks. We definitely don't want to bring moldy items into your site. And this is one that, depending on how many attendees are involved, might require a teaching assistant to help with the different stations that we've set up. We've also recently expanded this one to make it a day-long workshop with a tabletop activity on identifying real examples of mold and lots of other things that get mistaken for mold. And this is drawn from our own work with other institutions in our study collection. Or we can swap that content with a presentation on integrated pest management for a full day as well, which is a topic that pairs really nice with this workshop, since mold is part of what you're looking for with the integrated pest management process. So I hope that gives you a sense of just how flexible and kind of customizable these workshops are. Okay, so you've figured out the workshop you want. You've planned your budget accordingly, or at least identified where the gaps are in your budget are that maybe we could help you find some fundraising for. And you've gotten buy-in from the rest of your staff to participate. What does the actual process of working with us on one of these workshops look like? First would be just to get in touch directly with me, and send me an email, call me, and we'll start planning. I'll pull in our project manager, and we can have a call if needed to talk more about your specific needs, and go over content, and then we can put together a proposal if that's something that is required for your institution. From there, we talk scheduling. I will say, like, generally, just because we're really busy, we have lots of things going on all the time, we like to have at least 2 months out to kind of plan these. There have been some cases where we've gone a little quicker than that, but generally that is our preference just for our scheduling purposes. And from there, we draft a memorandum of understanding that goes over each institution's responsibility in the workshop. Our billing schedule typically works in that we bill half of the rate at the time of signing the MOU, and then half after the workshop is completed, just to allow us to have a more accurate picture of travel costs. But if that billing structure doesn't work for your institution, we can be flexible. Especially we've had to adapt when, if you're part of a government entity or university, we might know you have your very specific process on billing, and we're able to work with you on that. Then we come to you or to your Zoom room, or we can use ours if needed, but we tend to find that most institutions like to use their own Zoom accounts or whatever meeting, digital meeting platform you have, just to streamline things and keep it simpler, but we can still provide that service. we'll deliver the workshop, and then we will follow up in the next few days. So a bit more about what the follow-up looks like. We send out any PowerPoints or other resources that we may have discussed, along with a survey that's really intended for you as the host site, just so you can give us any feedback on how the process went. And then, as I mentioned, we do final billing. And if there are additional services that come up, for instance, maybe some additional consulting work in the form of a preservation needs assessment. Maybe you're like, hey, we really need to have these objects treated by our lab. We can't do this on our own. Or if they're even like, hey, there are future training workshops that we want for our staff, we can keep it talking. We can keep talking to you about that. So even if you haven't worked with us before, we're hoping a workshop like this is really the start of a long-term relationship, and it's not just one and done. So that is basically the process. I told you this would be a short webinar. And with that, if you have any questions for me, or you want to get started on planning your own fee-for-service workshop, here's my contact info. So yeah, let me know if there's any questions. Maybe we'll give it just a minute here. Yeah, but I'll just say, I mean, we really love doing these workshops. You know, teaching is such a huge part of our mission. It's really amazing to go to all of these different sites, meet with everybody who works there, and just, you know, kind of learn from you as much as we're teaching. I mean, I think so many people that we find every time we do these workshops, they have similar concerns, or, you know, it can sometimes feel like you're alone, that you don't have all of the training, you don't have all the expertise. But I think one of the things that we find is that you're really not alone. Like, this field is so diverse and so specialized that we're really here to help sort of make up some of that training, that additional professional development that you need. That's often, you know, kind of lacking in the more like theoretical museum studies grad programs, let's say. Wow, well, it seems like maybe I've covered everything that you already wanted to know. Maybe just I'll give it like one more minute. Okay, here's a question just came in. Thank you. If you have one component that is hands-on and one that is webinar, would you do it all on site? Yeah, we can definitely do that all on site. I mean, I think the disaster response workshop is a great example of one that, while like it does work as a hybrid webinar and then workshop, we've also done it in one day where we just kind of include that sort of the content that would be in the webinar on site instead. And it's, you know, it's kind of just 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I mean, I think the nice thing about doing it as a webinar is we kind of space it out a little bit, so you get that content maybe a week before while it's still fresh in your mind, and then you get to apply it on site instead of just having all of that information all at once. But of course, the downside of that is that then you're like, wait, what did we talk about a week ago? So there's kind of pluses and minuses to both of those. But yeah, we can absolutely, you know, with the hybrid model, just make that an on-person or an in-person experience, if that is your question. All right, any other questions? Well, in that case, just big thanks to Camilla, who you see is on the screen, who's been helping with all of the behind the scenes setup and tech for today's webinar. Thanks to all of you for showing up. and an extra special thanks if you are considering a donation. Our next webinar will be titled How a Conservator Looks at Works on Paper on December 4th at noon. We hope to see you there. And when this program ends, a little survey is going to pop up after the window closes. We kindly ask that you fill this out and let us know how we're doing. Thank you so much. Hope everybody has a good afternoon or whatever time it is where you're tuning in from.